end with something like nuclear Armageddon, how it might happen next year. So, here's the breakdown. Let's talk. First off, to understand the story, we got to do a little bit of history first, so real quick, here's our recap. The Cold War is this 40-year war that we fight with Russia. Can you tell me why it's called the Cold War? Why is that? What's that? No one shot anybody. It was not a hot war. There weren't bullets flying. It was all cold because why? Why didn't we just shoot our missiles at Russia? Show them who's boss. That's very good. Mutually assured destruction. Everyone would nuke everyone. We'd all be dead. So we couldn't fight the war that way. And for 40 years, we fight in other ways instead. And the biggest way that we fought was by building nukes, trying to get more nukes than the other guy, and what becomes known as the arms race. Well, the arms race for America starts off real well. We have the nuclear bomb first. We make 30,000 of them by the end of 1960, which is really pretty good. The problem is that Russia, they do a lot better than us in the 70s and 80s. And by the time we get to like 1989, there are 70,000 nuclear weapons between our two countries. It is enough to annihilate the Earth 11 times over, which seems like too much, right? So maybe we have to find a way of kind of spending those resources more wisely. And in the 80s, we signed this thing called the INF Treaty. It's the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which basically says to both countries, whoa, let's slam on the brakes a little bit, let's draw down our nuclear bombs. We don't need to blow up the world 13 times, like once is probably enough. And so after that, you'll notice that the nuclear weapons in both of our countries dropped pretty significantly to where they are today. We each have about 5,000 nukes. It's still plenty to annihilate all life, but we're not spending too much money on nukes in general. And the reason I'm giving you this history lesson right now is why? You know what happened this week, ladies and gentlemen. John is always a good guess where nukes are concerned, but not this time. So we decided to pull out of the INF Treaty as of this week. The INF Treaty, the White House announced, we will no longer be followed, which seems to be a pretty big deal. Donald Trump has said this is because Russia is not following the deal. They have been secretly researching nuclear weapons and building up their arms supplies and violating the treaty. And so Donald Trump has given an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin. He has given him 60 days to come back into the treaty, to follow the rules, or we walk. And that's the end of the INF Treaty as we know it. When is the deadline for that, ladies and gentlemen? What day will be the moment of truth? It was yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. It turns out the 60 days have already elapsed. Russia, I guess, has not done whatever they were supposed to, according to Donald Trump. And now, as of today, the INF Treaty is gone. It is over. Donald Trump has said we're no longer participating, and Russia, as of this morning, said they will begin to redouble their nuclear bombs. They will begin to build new ones and research new kinds of nuclear warheads. And here we are, Cold War II, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We'll talk about this more next week if we're not all dead by then. All right? Second story is about this man right here, Michael Cohen. Anyone tell me who this guy is? He's famous, sort of, today for what? He is in prison, yes. Why? Who is he? That's a good guess. Not this time. In this case, Michael Cohen is Donald Trump's lawyer. At least, I think ex-lawyer is a better way to frame it. And Michael Cohen, for years, especially around the election, was what's called a fixer. A fixer is a lawyer who kind of gets rid of problems, solves problems, usually legally, for their clients. And Michael Cohen, we got to do some backstory here too. So real quick, the reason he's involved is because of a woman named Stephanie Clifford. Now, if you don't know who Stephanie Clifford is, she's better known. She's an actress, and she's better known under her acting name, which is Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump had an affair. Stay with me, boys. Had an affair, allegedly, back in 2011, right after Melania gave birth to their youngest son, Barron. Donald Trump allegedly had this affair, and settled up with it. And then she talked about it in an interview in this magazine, but started in 2015, she refused to answer any more questions about it. In fact, she wouldn't talk at all about the alleged affair once 2015 happened. Why is that? So the question was, had she signed what's called an NDA? It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And these agreements basically say, I will say nothing about whatever it is, this topic that happened or maybe didn't happen. Who knows? But why would she sign this document?
Excuse me.
Yeah, you essentially sign it by getting money. She was paid by Michael Cohen. This is not alleged. We know this for real because he said it. Michael Cohen said that yes, he gave her $130,000 to not talk about this affair, which may or may not have happened. Now, what I've just told you in there, what is illegal? Anyone know? What laws were broken in the story that I just told you? And the answer is nothing. Nothing there is illegal. You are allowed to cheat on your husband or wife. You shouldn't, but it's not illegal. And then once you do so, you can pay someone to not talk about it. All that is legal in the United States. That's fine. The problem is that the NDA was paid for. That $130,000 was paid for with Donald Trump's election funds. And that is a big no-no. You can't do that. You cannot raise money to run for election and then spend that money without disclosing it for reasons like that. That is a felony called election fraud. And because of that, the FBI last year raided Michael Cohen's home, arrested him, and eventually he went to trial. Now, Donald Trump was not pleased about any of these events and has called the whole thing a witch hunt, basically saying there's no real evidence, no wrongdoing happened, it's just people out to get him. And he's made this claim on more than one occasion. He's repeated it several times. At one point, just saying witch hunt in all capital letters. And it's worth noting that witch hunt normally implies that there are no guilty people, that you're making all of this up. And this is difficult to maintain because as of today, there are 5 people who all work for Donald Trump that are in prison right now. They have all either pled guilty or they've been convicted by a jury and are all felons who worked for him in the last 5 years and are all now currently in jail. Now on top of that, Donald Trump last year said Cohen pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violation that are not a crime. And I think it's important that we mention this now. That's not true. It is a crime. That's why he's in jail. Like, that's why you go to prison. It was a federal crime of election fraud. You can't just say it's not a crime. That's not the way crime works, okay? Now, because of this, Donald Trump has sued the federal government to stop the Cohen trial from going forward. Cohen has sued Donald Trump. Stormy Daniels has also sued Donald Trump. And so have 18 other women who allege sexual harassment against the President of the United States. We live in interesting times, is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. More on this story as it comes up. But the reason we're talking about it today is because Cohen last week made this statement on Twitter that he essentially helped or paid companies to rig online polling companies to make Donald Trump look better. And he did so because Donald Trump ordered him to do so. Now, not only is this illegal, but if it is true, and I'm not saying it is, there's no evidence right now that says so, but if Donald Trump asked him to rig the polls, that is a felony as well. And the United States, the President of the United States may be charged with a felony if that is the case. Now that's obviously big news whether it happens or not. The online polls were things that were done back in the primary season. So when Trump was running against other Republicans and had this big lead, Cohen is saying that a lot of this big lead right here was he paid money to make sure that the polls came out this week. And that's obviously a pretty serious charge. Now this money also went to create Twitter groups that supported Donald Trump's run for president. And one of those Twitter groups, and this is real, was called Women for Cohen, which was all fake. A bunch of women who said they loved Michael Cohen and saw him as a sex symbol among politicians. I don't have anything else to say there. I'm leaving that there for you to see. Anyway, last story I want us to look at is the State of the Union, which was Tuesday night. How many saw part of the State of the Union? Yeah, right, a thrill a minute, exciting roller coaster ride. And as you watch that, there's always 2 people behind the president. Who are they, and why do they sit there? Who are those people? Now, it is the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. She's in charge of the House of Representatives. That's where she's speaking. That makes sense. But why is the Vice President of the United States sitting behind her? I mean, I get it, the Speaker makes sense, but why is the Vice President hanging out back there?
President of the Senate.
Very good. And this you'll have to know for a Constitution test. The leader of the Senate is the Vice President. He cannot vote, but he's still leader of the Senate, and that's why the 2 of them sit there, okay? Anyway, the speech went on. We're not talking too long about it. We talked about Kim Jong-un the other day, but the big one I wanted to mention was Donald Trump said this. Maybe the most controversial part of the speech was that the U.S. has a moral duty to build a border wall, and quote, it will get built. Now I'm mentioning this because however you feel about the border wall, good idea, bad idea, in 8 days, what happens to the U.S. government? We shut down again. That's right. We have not stopped the shutdown. We only delayed it, and that all comes to an end next Friday. So unless we compromise with the Democrats, or the Democrats let him build the wall, we will do this all over again next week. We'll go back down and shut down. 800,000 people stop getting paychecks. So there's that. Okay? Again, we'll cover that next week. I want to add on something a little lighter, so we'll talk about this. Some of you may have seen this already, but you're allowed to invite guests to come to the State of the Union, and Donald Trump invited this little boy whose name was Joshua Trump. Now, Joshua Trump is not related to Donald, but apparently he's gotten bullied at his junior high for having the same name as him. People pick on him because his last name is Trump, which is not cool, all right? I mean, junior high kids in general monsters, so I understand it, but no, you should not be doing that. You can see him sitting right there. It's a huge honor. He's sitting in the House of Representatives there. This is a cancer survivor. That was a World War II vet. You know, pretty cool. The problem here, of course, is that this speech happens at 9 o'clock at night. Hey, hello. And it went on for like an hour and a half, and what happened to poor Joshua?
He fell asleep.
He totally passed out in the middle of the speech, which was a nice, cute moment, you know, and otherwise pretty slow speech, but certainly nice. Now, the thing is, this is not the first time something like this has happened before. People have fallen asleep in the middle of the speech before, and it's always kind of awkward because it's a big deal. You're not supposed to do that. And last time, it was one of the Supreme Court justices who actually fell asleep in the middle of it, and that's awkward. You shouldn't be doing that. There's one thing weird. If you watch the justices during the State of the Union, what do they do or not do? You know, they never clap or stand at any point. Why not? They have to be impartial. They are judges. They're not supposed to play political sides. But last year, as Trump was, I think it was last year, Trump was speaking, this is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's like 85 years old. She's 3 feet tall. And she just completely in the middle, boom, passed out in the middle of the speech. Now, the amazing part was that afterwards they asked her, like, what happened? Why did you nod off in the middle of the president's speech? And her answer that she gave to the reporters was, well, to be fair, I wasn't entirely sober. That was the answer she gave to the reporters. Now, that's amazing. First off, can you imagine another job where you're allowed to say that? Like, you just imagine me, like, nodding off here when I wake up, I'm like, sorry, I'm not entirely sober. Like, how on earth? I would be fired immediately. Why could she get away with that? Why did she not get fired after this? This job serves for life. It is a life term. You don't get fired from the Supreme Court. You got to know that for the final exam, too, okay? All right, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We got